All right, folks, let's go over this one more time. What do I mean when I say that Rome doesn't exist? I'm going to try to hit all of the highlights. One, do I mean that literally the Roman time period did not exist? No. What I mean is, archaeologically speaking, Roman culture doesn't exist. They have no unique material culture. Anything you can think of that has been designated as Roman came from either Greece, Turkey, Asia, or Egypt. This includes things like the aqueducts, their clothing style, the style of their buildings, their gods, everything. Two, what about the Byzantine Empire or the Ottoman Empire? Neither of those groups were Roman. They were Greco-Turkic in the former case and Persian and Asian in the latter case. Three, what about the entirety of the written historical record? I am sorry to break the news to you, but we have 0 original copies of anything. Any Roman author you can think of, we have no record of their original manuscripts. All we have are medieval copies written in the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries that can be dated, and those were written by the church in scriptoriums, and they burned the originals. Now this is weird because we do have documentation from civilizations that are older than Rome. 4. What about places like the Colosseum or Trajan's Column or Roman inscriptions written on things? You cannot radiocarbon date stone. The Colosseum has no artifacts that can be radiocarbon dated because it was looted. Trajan's Column matches another column from Greece, indicating that it was dragged there. The thing on top of it is a statue of the Pope, added much later. Inscriptions don't have geological weathering on them. They were added much later. 5. What about ancient Chinese mentions of the Great Roman Empire? Those don't exist. They mention the Great Syrian Empire, and we have no idea how advanced Syria was because they've been at war for forever and archaeologists can't get in. 6. What about the city of Rome? The city of Rome was created by the Vatican after the Great Western Schism. It was cow fields until the 1500s. 7. Where did we get this information from about Rome then? Mussolini and other fascists. Like, y'all realize that Wikipedia is a starting point for information, not an ending point, right? I'll even use a source that you guys love, an old white dude from the 1800s, specifically a German American named Frederick Hirth, who was the premier Chinese history expert in the Western Hemisphere. Tatsin is another way to spell Daquin. Pause to read. So even in the 1800s, we knew it was only prejudice that made people think that that had to be the Roman Empire. Not everyone did. This clearly points to Syria. And he wasn't the only one saying this. Here is another example. From the distant land of Daquin, aka Syria. Just because you don't know doesn't make me wrong. You know how I talk about science being Jason Voorhees, and it does not care about hagiographies or historiographies or national mythographers, and it will catch up with the Roman folks eventually. Let me show you a headline about Pompeii. Mwah. Would you guys like to see some of the photos? Up one from a distance, so human for scale. And a closer look at some of these Greek designs. A look at some of the pottery that was uncovered. And of course, this was the big find, a Grecian fresco. Notice how there's no like childlike block letters in Latin anywhere on this. let's talk about that for a second. So oftentimes when you see Greek frescoes, especially in museums where they're being passed off as Roman, you'll see Latin block letters, like looking like they were done by toddlers in the fresco itself. I have had my suspicions for a while that that was added much later, likely by Victorian colonizers who were robbing everything that wasn't nailed down and some things that were, because Latin as a language, like a script, wasn't used until the Middle Ages. One of the other really interesting things that the archaeologists found during this excavation were 3 intact skeletons. There are photos online, but I'm not going to share them here out of respect reasons. Why this is interesting, though, is there are not supposed to have been any intact skeletons. But since we now know from X-ray research that those cement mummies that are very famous from Pompeii are fake and were created in the 19th century to drum up tourism for Pompeii, this just reaffirms that. It also gives archaeologists the opportunity to radiocarbon date these bones and do some archaeogenetics to find out who they were. But do they have the balls to do so? Guess we'll find out. Just because you're unaware of something that the academic world has known for over 100 years doesn't make it a conspiracy theory. And to all you Rome bros out there hate watching this video, you're gonna hate this. We are looking at this, the credibility of early Roman history, printed in 1902 in an academic journal. We begin. There are certain peculiar features in the case of Roman history, the most noticeable of which is the character of Roman literature. No developing native product, but literature due to foreign impulse and worked out in conscious imitation of Greek models. Most noticeable again in its effect upon the tradition of Roman history was the servile attitude maintained towards Rome by the rest of the world. Deliberate falsification. Oh wait, it gets better. These histories were written out long after the beginning of Latin Vulgate literature and owed their form and much of their content to the annals of the Greeks. No fragments of the document are in our possession belongs to a redaction earlier than the 3rd century. In short, after Pius's keen critique, it is difficult to see in them anything but 2nd century creations based on the tradition of great Roman families and the works of early Greek historiographers. But hold up, there's this new thing that might help. The control exercised over results obtained, archaeological and topographical discoveries. Systematic excavations carried out in the Forum for 2.5 years. Quick aside, scientific by their standards. It was expected much would be found to help in tracing the course of development of the city itself. And lo, the great rivalry between archaeology and geology was born. As a matter of fact, the discoveries made precipitated a violent struggle between those who accept the traditional account of the regal period and those who do not. Topographical conditions prove at once that Livy's account of settlement of many thousands of Latins in the valley in the days of Ancus Martius must be absolutely wrong. This is not a new or secret problem. It is just hard to talk to the public about. And before you ask who wrote that, it was this dude, Samuel Ball Planter, an archaeologist who got his PhD at Yale. Dr. Planter's topographic studies of archaeological and historical sites was so groundbreaking and important that college professors will still assign his work as mandatory reading. So yeah, we've been knew that Rome is stuff. Now that I've done several videos showing how Victorian archaeologists were willing to take a lot of artistic license and in some cases even fake artifacts, I'm going to show you how Roman coins are nonsense. First, it's important to understand that forgeries are a multi-billion-dollar industry to this day. Now we're going to look at some compare and contrast between Roman coins and medieval pilgrimage badges. And I want you to notice the difference in quality. Medieval badge, Roman coin. Medieval badge, Roman coin. The idea that Roman coins that are 1,000 years older than medieval pilgrimage coins would be in pristine condition requires you to be a level of rube that is beyond the stratosphere. You have to let go of this idea that the Roman Empire was the first reach. And yes, I'm pronouncing that wrong on purpose. Hey there, thanks for the example. I went and looked up that research for you, so let's go over why these coins are not Roman. Multiple coins have been found in these graves. Here's an example of some of them. And here's a few more. Now I'm going to lighten these up a little so that you can see the script better. There we go. Now, if you were listening to bad archaeology from the 19th century, I can see why you would think that this is Roman, but there is nothing distinctly Roman about any of these coins, including the language, which is the Parthian script, which looks like this. The Parthian script is a version of the Phoenician script. Because again, Roman capital letters did not exist until the 15th century. So I found this interesting. Despite finding plenty of organic material, nothing from this site has been radiocarbon dated. That's weird. 2 are fake. 1 is Greek. Let's start with the last one first. So here you claim that these are all Latin coins. What? Delta on the left and pi on the right are Greek letters. A sigma up top is a Greek letter, and that's not an R, it's a P. All of these ancient Greek cultures wrote their P's as R's. But shouldn't you know that? On to the fakes. Luckily, Google reverse image search exists, and these coins have been studied since at least 1915 and have no provenance. While these are literally from a reseller website with no indication of where they came from. Once again, numismatics is pseudoscience based on Victorian grift. And yet somehow here you are, asking me this question that you claim you haven't been able to ask me. So let's look at some of these Julia Augusta coins. I pulled from several museums. Here's one from the British Museum that was donated in 1857 from parts unknown. It was donated by a man named Harry, who was known as a local medalist, aka someone who makes coins. Another one from the British Museum. This one has no provenance at all. Doesn't even say how the British Museum got it. This one from the Boston Museum is really good. It was purchased in 1963 from Robert Hetch Jr., a man who is infamous for being involved in litigation until his death for stealing antiquities and also falsifying them. Here's one from the Met Museum, purchased in 1908. Doesn't say from whom or from where the coin came from. And my final example is from the Chicago Art Museum with, again, absolutely no provenance. It says it was a gift from a Mr. Dunham, but no idea where he got it from. So yeah, those coins might say Julia Augusta on them because they're not from ancient Rome. They're medieval coins, if you're lucky, from when going on a tour of Europe was rich people vacation. They would get like felt-covered books to keep the coins in so that they could have, you know, tchotchkes of their time on vacation. A lot of them, though, were just created out of whole cloth in the Victorian era because there was no quality control. Museums would buy anything, and you could make a killing as long as you had no morals or ethics whatsoever. Y'all, I'm so tired. Okay, this is someone who is once again bringing me proof that Roman coins are real using a news article from the beginning of this month. Let's take a look. These are the coins in question as they were found in the woods in Italy. They were found by a hiker who was part of a volunteer paleontology and archaeology group after an area of forest had been cut down. According to the story, he found one shining on the ground and started to dig and found the others in a terracotta pot and a coin hoard, which is the only way we ever find these coins is in a hoard. Two problems with coin hoards. Normally they're found by folks like this dude and they dig them up, meaning they've disturbed the soil and there's no way to tell in the stratigraphy where the coins were buried. Second problem is that Italy, for some reason, is basically allergic to using radiocarbon dating. So here is the story of what happened for the next year and a half. Local archaeologists spent more than a year measuring, weighing, and documenting the coins. And if doing any of that would have told us the age of the coins, that would matter. But it doesn't. Anybody can create coins at any time and bury them in the ground without using stratigraphy to see when it was buried or radiocarbon dating of the terracotta pot to see how old it is. We have no idea when those coins got there or even when they were made. They are completely useless to science and chronology. Getting an article on CNN is not the same thing as science. Sure, I'd be happy to talk about Caligula's giant ship that was allegedly pinned to a date based on dendrochronology. But first, let's figure out which one of Caligula's giant ships you're talking about. Wikipedia says you must be talking about the ship they found when they were building the airport in the 1950s. However, as you can see, there is no source, and Googling it brings back no data or research papers. It all sources back to this. However, I did find pictures from the 1950s, and I seriously doubt that this is Caligula's giant ship. Also, what here would you describe as being Roman? What signifies this is a Roman boat? However, two giant ships were found in the 1930s. However, both of these were completely destroyed during World War II. Not that it would matter, since it's fascist revisionism. Mussolini made that boat Roman. As again I ask, what about this is a Roman ship? So yeah, if you can find a JSTOR article or ResearchGate, academia.edu, anything that has that dendrochronology data in it, I'd love to see it because I can't find it anywhere. However, even if it is correct, nothing about those ships is culturally Roman because Rome has no unique material culture because it didn't exist. Once upon a time in 1865, a Spanish archaeologist made the first historical mention of a Roman fortress called Castro Valente. And for over 150 years, we just took his word for it. But science is like Jason Voorhees and does not care about Rome-bro fantasies. It's gonna catch up. Oh no. So in case you don't know, LiDAR is a ground-penetrating radar that they've been using in Brazil to show off where all of these Mayan ruins, huge cities, are just buried under the jungle. And now other people are going to use them. And this is going to happen a lot. Here is the medieval fort in Europe that had been warped by reforestation and then just turned into Roman ruins for no reason. I got bad news. Those aqueducts are identifiably Syrian. School just lied to you. Syria had been making that concrete since 6500 BCE. But you don't have to take my word for it. This one's a bridge, but I just like how old it is. While not an aqueduct, this does showcase how they knew how to make aqueduct arches too. But it makes sense, because when China talks about the Great Daquin Empire, they mean Syria. It finally happened. Archaeologists are back in Syria. Sorry, let me back up a second. If you're not one of my regulars, I am fairly obsessed with the Great Syrian Empire, which ancient China talked about, and for a while modern historians thought meant ancient Rome. But check this shit out. Just a couple of days ago, they think it's 1600 years old. Radiocarbon dating hasn't come back in yet. So far what they've uncovered is about 60 feet by 25 feet, and that's not even all of it. Humans for scale. So what did I do? I instantly zoomed in and began translating. I put these two right side up even though they're upside down on the picture. Then I had to flip it to get the rest of it, which gave me some interesting things. The one I couldn't quite get either means noticeable or 50 million. My favorite part is disorderly. Ooh, it's still a vibe. Now, if you go read something about this and you come back here and tell me, but it says it's from the Roman era, I will block you, because I have explained extensively that the Roman era is a time period, like the medieval period or the Bronze Age. It is not indicative of a culture. It's a remnant back from when we thought the Roman Empire began around 625 BCE and ended around like 470-ish CE, which we now know is not correct on like any level at all. So it just means during that time period. Precisely 0 things in that mosaic are Roman. All of them are Greek. More. Come on, Syria, I know you've got more. Unless you've just badly misspelled Phoenician script, I don't know where you're getting this information from. Here's the Etruscan alphabet with all of its Phoenician lettering circled. And here is the Phoenician script if you would like to compare yourself. Note that some of the letters I didn't circle are still very similar, making Etruscan a variant of the Phoenician script. And that's why I will keep deleting your comments, because you don't know what you're talking about. Let me assure you that I never say anything unless I can back it up. Let's roll tape. Here is a recent study of the archaeogenetics of Etruscans, who were Anatolians, European hunter-gatherers, Bronze Age pastoralists, and Iranian Neolithic farmers. Note that Anatolian includes Levant. It goes all the way down into Syria. And substantial gene flow from the Eastern Mediterranean, aka the Levant, continued all the way through the imperial period. Of course, this makes sense once you realize that we have found evidence of multi-story buildings in ancient Syria. Like, more than one. Including this. And man, those sure look like roads. Modern Italians are medieval immigrants. They're not related. Okay, so I have a question. If you studied classics, at what point was it brought to your attention that what you were studying is not primary source material? By that I mean, we don't have any copies from the time period that these histories and biographies, etc., were originally allegedly written. While we do have older
civilization's original documents that have all been radiocarbon dated to prove they come from the time period they say they come from. As the saying goes, paleography is only good enough until someone asks for a radiocarbon date. So why wouldn't you radiocarbon date the manuscripts, especially the ones in the Vatican?
Oh, right, because every time hard science gets involved, it turns out the Vatican's just making shit up again.